Yeah, so let's talk about our beginning. So I remember pacing the bedroom, and we were trying to think of ways to incorporate you into the company.
Also, so we could travel together. That was also a goal. We wanted to be able to travel together.
Yeah, because tax purposes.
Yes.
We couldn't write off your airfare and your expenses or whatnot unless I made you an employee,
Right.
or something like that. We figured something out with the LLCs, and I think what ended up, I think we were talking about it. One thing was maybe you'd be an esthetician and we open up a little studio and it's just you and me. One thing was like, do you want me to teach you how to do PMU? And you tattoo with me, and you were like, hell no.
I can't do blood.
Yeah, you can't do blood. But I thought that would be like kind of super cool.
Well, because I was a makeup artist, so I can do makeup, but I couldn't. Yeah, the blood thing, no.
Yeah, so that wasn't going to work. And so we were contemplating some ideas, and then LI Pigments one day reaches out to me.
Right.
A long time ago, and maybe 9 years ago, something like that. I don't know, 9 years ago, and asked me to be a distributor. And I think I may have said no at first, or was leaning towards no. But then your shoulder started hurting.
My wrists and my hands.
Your wrists and your hands. Arthritis.
Yeah.
And they say necessity, what's that saying? Necessity is the object.
No.
Necessity fuels invention.
Right.
Something like that, right? So it became not just a desire for us to work together and for me to figure a path for you out of the Venetian and to join the company. It became necessary because I was watching you suffer physically. You were hurting. And then, we revisited being a distributor for LI. I called them. We had a conversation. You and I had lots of conversations. I told you I can't do this alone.
Right.
And
I'd have to be willing to quit my job.
You'd have to be willing to quit your job, and you would have to handle that part. We were going to have to build an online store, and get into selling, and so you agreed, but what?
Well, what?
You agreed, but you couldn't quit right away. We were so nervous.
No, I had to work at the Venetian and do the store packing orders.
For how many years? Like 3?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. So you kept a full-time job at the Venetian.
Right.
Cottailing.
Yes.
And then you'd come home. We started our store.
Right.
At our home, our modest home.
Right.
And one room we turned into where we stocked all and we started our store with LI Pigments only. Only. And I can remember like them being on the shelf, looking at the pigments on the shelf in the bedroom.
It was in one cabinet.
One cabinet. Our stock was in one cabinet.
We were so
proud. We
proud.
didn't have a lot of money.
No, we didn't.
And that's what I want to talk about is I want people to understand that you don't necessarily need a lot of money to start a company.
Right.
To build your dream, go after your dream. We did not have a lot of money, and we were conservative. We were risk takers, but calculated risk takers.
Definitely, yep.
And that's why we started with one product. That's why the first store we built was like a low end, kind of store, and you stayed at the Venetian. We you couldn't afford to quit. We couldn't afford to go down to just my salary. And at that time, I was tattooing clients. That was my salary, seeing clients and training.
Right.
And it just made us too nervous. So we did pull money out of our savings and what we were comfortable with, which wasn't a lot.
Right.
And
I think we started with like $8,000 or something.
$8,000?
I think it was around there.
Yeah, that sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
And I think we bought $4,000 or $5,000 worth of LI pigments.
Yeah. The top colors, I think.
The top colors only. And then we had to buy some packing materials, and I think we spent the rest, maybe $2,000, building a storefront. And so
Big commerce, yeah, I remember.
Yes. So, and our whole thing is like, we just agreed that we will never go into debt. You and I were okay growing this slowly. Definitely, right? Because we didn't want to go into debt.
No, that scared both of us.
Yes. No taking equity out on the home.
Right.
There was no way in hell we were going to do that.
Nope.
And I think one of my favorite sayings is those that rise quickly fall quickly. And a lot of times, a lot of moments in my life, I go back to these quotes that just stick with me, right? And they're words to live by, words to thrive by. And it's just these little slogans. Those that rise quickly fall quickly, right?
Right.
Comparison is the thief of joy. These little slogans, but they have such deep meaning, and they have something very profound to tell you and to remind you of. So I fall back on these quotes a lot.
I want to just mention one thing. One thing we skipped over was I lost my shift. We all did. All the cocktail waitresses lost their shift, and they put us on rotation. So I went from a really good shift to not as good at all.
Yeah.
So my money went like less than half.
Yeah.
So that was a huge motivator.
And that was during 2008.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
Yeah.
Back then. And I remember that. It was scary. You lost your shift.
But it was the best thing that could have ever happened, right? Because that was so motivating.
Well, there was two things going on in our lives. You had that. You had lost your shift. Your income had decreased by half. And imagine that.
Right.
Our house was on the line.
Right.
During that time, remember?
Right.
We had done what everybody else had done and done an interest-only loan. You were a cocktail waitress. I was a tattooer seeing clients, so we were what do the banks call us? Stated income. So we didn't have like W-2s to produce. So and it was fine. It was all fine because we were paying extra on the mortgage every single month, faithfully and religiously. So it wasn't just the interest being paid.
Yeah, we were disciplined.
Right, because if you do an interest-only loan, which is okay, it's important that you don't just pay that interest payment every month. You have to be disciplined and commit to paying
for a home loan. Yes.
Additional money every month
towards the principal
to pay down the principal. And you and I did that. So some months it was $100, some months it was $500, just depending on how much extra we had in the budget that month. And that was our saving grace. By the time 2008 hit, everything crashed. Our interest-only loan was up, and all of a sudden, you and I didn't qualify.
Oh, it was so scary.
Because they weren't doing stated income loans anymore.
Right.
And we were scared to death we were going to lose our home. And what saved us, Kat?
You mean by paying extra?
Yes.
Yes.
That
definitely. So we were kind of flush. So we qualified because everything had dropped.
Everything had dropped. The value of our home had dropped. Everything had dropped. And it was the fact that we had been paying extra every month.
And we bought on the higher end too.
We
Not
did
the highest end, but the higher end.
But the higher end, yep. So, we had that going on. That was really stressful in our lives. You lost your shift. Your income decreased by 50%. The salon that I was in for 12 and a half years, all of a sudden, new owners came in.
Yes.
Didn't treat me very well.
Right.
And I felt very
vulnerable.
And all that stressful stuff, you're right. And I think that was the trifecta, those three things. It was those three things that lit a fire under our ass to make things happen for ourselves, right? Yes. Go after our dreams and make things happen.
Take a risk.
Take a risk, and to never end up in that situation again.
Right. To be in control of our own destiny.
Yes, and we have been ever since.